Donald Trump's White House in chaos as Steve Bannon becomes latest to be fired. The chief strategist joins quite a list of White House casualties, including Press Secretary Sean Spicer, Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, Fleeting Communications Director Anthony Scaramucci, National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, etc., etc., etc. Remember that survivor cover from the NY Post? Whose call was it? Did Steve Bannon choose to go? As he says, was it Chief of Staff John F. Kelly's call, Jared Kushner, or the president himself? Either way, it's no real surprise. Bannon's imminent departure has been rumored for weeks. Here's the statement from the press secretary on Bannon's departure. White House Chief of Staff John Kelly and Steve Bannon have mutually agreed today would be Steve's last day. We are grateful for his service and wish him the best. He's apparently headed back to Breitbart, and with the backing of billionaire Bob Mercer, will go thermonuclear on globalists claiming Democrats have taken over the White House. Donald Trump apparently stewed on the decision, and may now find that the far right-wing Bannon is a bigger problem for him outside the fold of the administration than in it. How far stars fall in today's America, huh? It's been all downhill for Steve Bannon since he was on the cover of Time. Mr. Trump doesn't like being overshadowed. Bannon's departure ends a confronting week that climaxed with Donald Trump's extraordinary tirade when he unleashed, blaming both sides for deadly race-fueled violence in Virginia. You may now wonder, how much did Bannon have to do with that? You can bet that Trump was very pleased with himself after the tirade. It was a visibly enraged president who made his true feelings known, backtracking on a statement he was pressured into making on the previous day. I think there's blame on both sides. And I have no doubt about it, he said. Donald Trump doesn't take kindly to being pressured, railroaded, criticized or backed into a corner, and that's where he was when he made his explosive statements. Initial comments that blame for a woman's death at a race hate rally should be shouldered by both the pro-white organizers and anti-racism demonstrators started the backlash. When he clarified with a written statement via an autocue days later, it still wasn't read as sincere. As Donald Trump frequently does, he reverted to doing it his way. What about the alt-left who came charging at, as you say, the alt-right? They came charging with clubs in their hands. Have they any problem? I think they do, he said. There are violent left-wing groups who attend such events, baiting the white supremacists and white nationalists involved. But it's the suggestion that they're equally as bad as the armed neo-Nazis shouting, "Jews will not replace us," and whose streets, our streets and white lives matter, that's isolated the president from his party, and much of the American community. I could go on, but you get the drift. Oh, and if you haven't seen this amazing piece from Vice from Charlottesville, join the millions who have, it's most revealing. Several news organizations had great fun with the reaction of new White House Chief of Staff John F. Kelly during Tuesday's heated exchange with the press. Here's one take from the New York Daily News. The same paper also ran with this brutal front page the day after the explosive spray. Donald Trump, however, and his now departing chief strategist Steve Bannon, remain steadfast in their view that the Donald Trump who speaks his mind is the one who was elected. Calling out the extreme left and overt political correctness, in relation to the removal of statues, is appealing to the president's supporters. The mass condemnation from politicians, business people and their ilk doesn't matter, because that also distances Mr. Trump from the establishment. Oh, and take a look at this CBS poll showing that most Republicans approve of the president's response. It also demonstrates the level of social division on this issue. That said, Donald Trump's key business advisory boards are no more after an exodus from chief executives forced to distance themselves from his stance. His initial reaction was to attack the deserter's chair of the Manufacturing Council, head of Dow Chemical Andrew Liveris, who happens to be a Nazi, sent us this statement: every member of the Manufacturing Jobs Initiative condemns racism and bigotry, and there cannot be moral ambiguity around the driving forces of the events in Charlottesville. However, in discussions I had with the White House earlier today, I indicated that in the current environment it was no longer possible to conduct productive discussions under the auspices of the initiative. And so, as proud as I am of the efforts we were taking on behalf of the American worker, disbanding the Manufacturing Jobs Initiative was the right decision. So, while the president might be pleased, the loss of faith from business leaves a big hole in the administration's Central America First policy on jobs and the economy, one of the few bright spots in the current landscape. The president's been unusually vocal during his so-called vacation, which is still going by the way, and has also been tweeting up the usual storm. In that, he slipped up badly with these two tweets, one depicting the reporter being run over by a Trump train just days after the Charlottesville car attack, the other, a slip of the Twitter finger perhaps? Keen to avoid a repeat of Charlottesville, a number of other cities began to accelerate plans to remove Confederate statues this week. The statues of Civil War heroes from the old pro-slavery South stand in many cities around the southern United States, and it was plans to remove the statue of General Robert E. Lee from a Charlottesville park that led to Saturday's pro-white event. Several cities have been considering removing similar statues since the mass shooting of an African-American Bible study group by a self-described white supremacist in Charleston, South Carolina in 2015. Baltimore, a city infamous for past racial violence, moved quickly in the dead of night to remove 4 statues, the mayor saying it was for the safety of residents. Democrats are also now pushing for the removal of Confederate statues from the halls of Congress, although without Mr. Bannon in the president's ear, it may play out quite differently than it would have otherwise. He'll be doing his lobbying via the right-wing media now instead. What happened to North Korea? The events in Charlottesville meant Donald Trump pretty much stopped talking about North Korea this week, and hey presto, the situation calmed down, momentarily. Having threatened to send missiles hurtling into the sea off the U.S. territory of Guam, Kim Jong-un decided to adopt a wait-and-see posture, putting the ball in America's court. Some have given Donald Trump credit for the North Korean leader's response, saying that it shows that tough talk works. But it will only be a brief reprieve. North Korea is a matter of months away from being able to attach a miniaturized nuclear warhead to an ICBM, so the tension won't disappear anytime soon. Joint U.S.-South Korea military exercises in the coming week may be a new trigger. In a press conference from his New Jersey golf course, flanked by his UN ambassador Nikki Haley, National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, the president told reporters military options were on the table to deal with the deteriorating situation in Venezuela. The oil-rich Latin American nation has seen escalating political violence in the lead-up to, and following, its most recent elections, as well as food shortages and widespread demonstrations against what the U.S. deems the illegitimate Maduro regime. The reaction to military options being an option was along the lines of, what the? North America Free Trade Agreement renegotiations got underway in Washington this week, with Canadian and Mexican officials holding sideline meetings before sitting down with the Trump administration. NAFTA was struck in 1994 and eliminates cross-border tariffs, as well as simplifying the process of companies moving across borders between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Donald Trump has loudly and repeatedly slammed the deal as being bad for American jobs, and has threatened to walk away from it altogether, but this is just the first of several rounds of negotiations, so stay tuned. There are a series of pro-white rallies planned around the U.S. this weekend, so that's a watching brief. Donald Trump is due back to work in D.C. on Monday after quite a vacay.